We are raised on a diet of noble lies, and one of the most dangerous among them is the belief that loyalty is a currency that can buy you safety. We are told from a young age that if we take care of the company will take care of us, and that if we sacrifice our time, our health, and our best years to build someone else's castle, we will be allowed to live safely within its walls. But there is a cold reality that often arrives too late for the honest worker, which is that in the arithmetic of modern business, devotion is not an asset, it is a liability. The man who gives everything has nothing left to bargain with, and this is the bargain with story of Thomas, who learned that the hardest working horse is not given a pasture when it can no longer pull the plow, it is simply sent away. Thomas was a fixture at the grand distribution center of Sterling Logistics, a massive warehouse that sat on the edge of town like a gray fortress of concrete and steel. For 25 years, Thomas walked through those metal gates at 6 in the morning rain, or shined his boots echoing against the pavement with the steady rhythm of a man who knew his purpose. He was not just an employee, he was part of the foundation. He knew how to fix the conveyor belts when they jammed in the humid summer months, and he knew which clients needed their shipments handled with velvet gloves, and which ones only cared about speed. He carried the institutional memory of the place in his head, a living library of solutions for problems that the managers didn't even know existed. Thomas believed in the unspoken contract. He believed that because he had missed his daughter's school plays to supervise emergency shipments, and because he had come in on weekends to cover for sick colleagues, that he was banking goodwill. He looked at the company logo on his chest, not as a uniform, but as a family crest. When younger workers complained about the low pay or the long hours, Thomas would shake his head and tell them to have patience, because he believed that Sterling Logistics valued steady hands and honest hearts. He was the first to arrive and the last to turn off the lights. His wife often told him that he cared more about that warehouse than he did about his own home, and Thomas would defend himself, saying that a man acts with honor where he is paid. He did not see himself as a resource on a spreadsheet. He saw himself as a guardian of the gate. But time moves on, and the world changes, and corporations do not have memories, they only have quarterly targets. The change began when the old site director retired a man who knew Thomas by name and asked about his garden. He was replaced by a new breed of manager, a man named Marcus, who was 20 years younger than Thomas and wore suits that cost more than Thomas made in a month. Marcus did not come from the floor. He came from a business school where they taught that efficiency was God, and people were merely variables in an equation that needed to be optimized. When Marcus walked through the warehouse, he did not look at the people, he looked at his tablet. He did not see Thomas fixing a jammed roller. He saw a statistical anomaly of overtime hours. He did not see 25 years of experience. He saw a salary that was higher than the market average for a floor supervisor. The atmosphere in the warehouse shifted from a noisy, bustling community to a place of quiet surveillance. Cameras were installed in the break rooms, and new software tracked every second of every worker's day. Thomas felt the chill in the air, but he ignored it because he told himself that he had nothing to fear. He was Thomas. He was the one who saved the Christmas rush of '99. He was the loyal soldier. Why would a general fire his best soldier? So Thomas worked harder. He tried to show Marcus that he was indispensable. When the systems crashed, Thomas stayed for 30 hours straight, manually sorting orders to ensure no client was let down. He went home with a back that screamed in pain and eyes that burned from exhaustion, but he slept the sleep of the righteous, believing he had proven his worth once again. A week later, Marcus called Thomas into his glass-walled office that overlooked the factory floor. Thomas walked in, wiping the grease from his hands, expecting perhaps a thank you or maybe even a discussion about the bonus he had been promised 3 years ago. But Marcus did not stand up to shake his hand, and he did not smile. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk, a chair that felt too small and too low. Sitting next to Marcus was a woman from Human Resources, whom Thomas had never met, a woman with a kind face but empty eyes holding a thick folder. Marcus started speaking about restructuring and market headwinds and the need to pivot towards a more agile workforce. He used words that floated in the air, like smoke, designed to obscure the simple, brutal truth. Thomas listened, but the words sounded like they were coming from underwater. He heard phrases like role redundancy and early retirement package. He looked out the glass wall, at the warehouse floor, at the younger man named Ben, whom Thomas had spent the last 3 months training. He had taught Ben everything he knew, thinking he was mentoring a future leader, but now he realized, with a sickening lurch in his stomach, that he had been digging his own grave. He had been training his cheaper replacement. "I don't understand," Thomas said, his voice cracking slightly. "I have given this place half my life. I haven't taken a sick day in 6 years. The shutdown last week won't fix that. Doesn't that count for anything?" Marcus looked at Thomas with a look of mild pity, the kind of look one gives to a child who doesn't understand the rules of a complex game. "We appreciate your service," Thomas Marcus said smoothly, "but this is a business decision. It is not personal. Your salary band is simply no longer compatible with the role's requirements, and Ben can handle the workload now thanks to your excellent training. We have prepared a severance package that requires your signature today. It is not personal." Those 3 words hit Thomas harder than a physical blow. To Thomas, it was entirely personal. His missed anniversaries were personal. His aching joints were personal. The stress that had grayed his hair was personal. He realized in that moment that his loyalty had been a one-sided love affair. He had loved the company, but the company was incapable of love. It was only capable of consumption. He signed the papers because he had no choice, and he was escorted to his locker to collect his things. He was not allowed to say goodbye to his crew. He was walked out the side door like a thief, holding a cardboard box containing a coffee mug, a few photos, and a pair of old gloves. As the heavy metal door clicked shut behind him, Thomas stood in the parking lot and listened. He heard the hum of the ventilation fans and the distant beep of the forklifts. The machine was still running. It did not miss him. It did not pause to mourn his departure. It just kept grinding forward, fed by the sweat of the new, younger bodies inside. Thomas drove home in silence, feeling a void opening up in his chest. He felt foolish. He felt like a man who had spent decades building a house on land he did not own. For weeks, Thomas sat in his armchair, staring at the wall. The silence of the house was deafening. He waited for the phone to ring, hoping that maybe the warehouse would fall apart without him, that they would call him back, begging for his help. But the phone did not ring. The shipments continued to go out. The world did not stop, because Thomas was no longer pushing the wheel. He went through the stages of grief. First denial, then anger, then a deep, hollow depression. He looked at his hands that were still strong and capable, and felt they were useless. He realized that he had tied his entire identity to a logo that had been stripped from his chest in 5 minutes. He had confused his job with his life. But slowly, as the seasons changed, Thomas began to wake up from his long slumber of servitude. He started to spend time in his garden, a place he had neglected for years. He watched the seeds he planted grow, not because of a corporate strategy, but because of the sun and the rain and his own care. He reconnected with his wife, who had been waiting patiently for him to return to her mentally for 20 years. One afternoon, while painting the fence, a neighbor stopped by and asked if Thomas could help him fix a broken generator. Thomas agreed and fixed it in an hour. The neighbor tried to pay him, but Thomas refused at first until he remembered the lesson of the glass office. He took the money. He realized that his skills had value outside of the fortress. Thomas started a small handyman business. It was nothing grand. No shareholders, no quarterly targets, no mission statements. Just him, his tools, and his neighbors. He worked when he wanted to work. If he wanted to stop at 2 in the afternoon to have coffee with his wife, he did. He discovered that he was not Thomas of Sterling Logistics. He was just Thomas. And for the first time in his life, he was free. he realized that the loyalty trap is built on fear. The fear that we are nothing without the institution. The fear that we need their validation to exist. But the institution needs us more than we need them. They need our life force to fuel their engines, while we only need the courage to walk away. 2 years later, Thomas ran into Ben, the young man who had replaced him at the supermarket. Ben looked 10 years older. His eyes were dark circles of exhaustion, and his shoulders were slumped. Ben told Thomas that things had gotten worse at the warehouse. Marcus had fired more people, and the workload had doubled. Ben was stressed, and his marriage was falling apart because he was never home. "I wish I had your courage," Thomas Ben said quietly. "I don't know how to get out. I feel like I owe them something because they promoted me." Thomas put a hand on the young man's shoulder and looked at him with sad, wise eyes. "Listen to me, Ben," Thomas said. "You do not owe them your soul. You are renting them your time, and that is a business transaction. Do not give them a discount on your life. Loyalty is a gift you give to family, to friends, and to yourself. Never give it to a thing that cannot feel your pulse." Thomas walked away, leaving Ben in the aisle, and stepped out into the bright afternoon sun. He got into his truck, which had his own name on the side, and drove home. He finally understood that the greatest betrayal was not that the company didn't love him back. The greatest betrayal was that he had never learned to love himself enough to set boundaries. We live in a world that glorifies the grind. We celebrate the person who sleeps under their desk and answers emails at midnight. But we rarely tell the end of that story. We do not talk about the empty retirement parties or the health that is broken and never repaired. We must learn to separate our worth from our labor. You are not your job title. You are not your salary. You are the time you spend with those who love you. You are the peace you find in your own heart. If you are currently holding up a wall that is ready to crush you, step back. Let it fall. You will be surprised to find that the sky does not fall with it. The only thing that collapses is the illusion that you are trapped. Protect your energy. Guard your time. And remember that when you die, your inbox will be full of messages that you never answered, and it will not matter. But the empty chair at your family's dinner table will matter. Be loyal to the future you own, not the past you sold. This is the lesson of the loyalty trap. It is a cage with the door unlocked, waiting for you to realize that you have held the key the entire time. Walk out. The air is better on the other side.